Muy buenas tardes. Está usted aquí en Organízate, Movilízate. Good afternoon. You are here in Mobilize, Organize, the podcast or Rebarte, where we interview agents of social change. And today we are honored to have a state representative, Greg Scott. Thank you so much for being with us today,
Yeah.
Greg.
Well, thank you for the invitation, and thank you. And I'm sorry that it took so long for me to get here, but I'm glad that we are finally here, and I'm excited.
Thank you, Greg. And as we know, we have a number of topics to talk today,
Yeah.
and uh, and also congratulations to you and your family.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, congratulations to you and your family. Therefore, one of the things that exciting things happened this week, no? With elections, we saw good participation, but also I would like to go with you today on three important topics that I think are interconnected. One, it has to do with the federal government shutdown.
Yeah.
The second one, we will address education, especially now that the Department of Education, the Federal Department of Education, is closed. The third one, we want to address the situation and the presence of ICE in the city, in the state, in the towns, and some of the initiatives that you are supporting, that you are presenting, and also what are the legislative initiatives that you are working on. No?
Sure.
Therefore, let's start, Greg, with the federal government shutdown.
Sure.
As we know, the budget, the federal budget, is something that belongs to the federal authorities, but it has ripple effects with the communities, with the state, with the county, with the local governments. What are those some of those ripple effects that you see that the state is already feeling?
Absolutely. So first of all, this federal government shutdown obviously does not just impact federal initiatives at the federal level that we all visibly see. So TSA, obviously our military getting paid, but it also affects locally on the ground in ways that I don't think people really understand. Let's take, for example, the SNAP program. In my district, I represent the communities of Norristown, Conshohocken, and the State House. In my district, there are 5,000, roughly 5,000, so 4,053 households that receive SNAP benefits. 4,053 households, right? And times that by 2 or 3, because it's in the house, probably have 2 or 3 people in that house, right? So 4,053 households receive SNAP benefits. SNAP benefits are what we also used to call food stamps, but it's a program that helps people that are on low income get groceries at the grocery store. So the same way that your listeners may be going to the local grocery store, whether it be Wegmans or Weis or ShopRite, and they buy their produce, you can have somebody behind you in the checkout line that's buying the same thing you're buying, produce, fresh foods, to feed their family. But instead of them using a debit card or a credit card, they use what we call an access card. And that access card helps to pay for all of the produce and those items that are on the conveyor belt to help them feed their families. And the impact on that is really high because we know that a lot of our small grocery stores are independently owned and operated, right? These are small mom and pop shops that keep our local economy going, whether it's the ShopRites or the Fresh Grocers, the Acme's. Well, Acme's more of a larger brand, but some of these other mom and pop grocery stores, they receive that money and they're able to hire employees. They're able to buy more produce and more items to put on the shelves. On another scale, Pennsylvania's number one industry is agriculture. We grow a lot of produce in Pennsylvania. We grow a lot of our food, and we send it to our local grocery markets, which keeps our produce levels low, our produce costs rather low for our local grocery stores. Well, if SNAP is done, people aren't buying that produce. Farmers aren't making money because they can't sell it. The grocery stores aren't buying it. Grocery stores may have to start laying off people. It's a ripple effect that has tremendous consequences. And that's not the only thing. Like, so let's say you're on SNAP. You're one of those 4,053 households in my district that receive SNAP benefits. The chances are, because you qualify for SNAP, you may also qualify for a program we call LIHEAP, which is a low income energy assistance program, and that helps people make sure that during the winter months they can pay their lights. The lights are on here. If they're having trouble with their lights, it'll help them pay their lights at a reduced cost. It'll help them pay their utilities at a reduced cost. So let's just say you're one of those 4,053 families that qualify for SNAP and qualify for LIHEAP. Right now, because of the federal government's inaction, there are people that are going hungry. There are people whose lights are about to get cut off, right? So then they're going to have to turn to our food pantries, our food banks. Okay, great. We've got food banks. We've got the Patrician Society. We've got Martha's Choice. We've got some of our churches, Acclamo, others that give out food. Well, the food that they typically give out is for the families that typically come a little bit more often and more regular. Well, now with this program zeroed out, people aren't going to the grocery, they're going to the pantries. Their customer load has doubled. So this week alone at Martha's Choice and Patrician Society, we've had more people than food. We've run out of food at our food pantries, right? And so the consequences of this federal government shutdown are tremendous. And I would be remiss to say that not only is the federal government shut down, but our state budget we haven't come to an agreement on our state budget, right? I'm happy to say that from the House perspective, I've voted 7 times for a House budget that we've kicked over to the Pennsylvania State Senate that is sat over there, and the Pennsylvania State Senate isn't working. They're not doing their job. And so, which is the inverse at the federal level. It's the state, it's the Congress, the House that hasn't come to work. And so the state's budget is roughly $53 million by itself. When you add the federal budget component to it, that's roughly about $110 billion. So if the state doesn't come through, if the feds don't come through with their portion of the $110 billion, we can't, on the state level, make up that $50 billion. Like, there's no way we can backfill any of these cuts. So it's going to have tremendous effects. In all of our area, you talk about public education. I know we're going to dig into that a little bit. Norristown School District, which we're sitting in right now, receives a slew of federal funds. Title I funding, Title VII, all these titles funding, right? 20-something million dollars roughly. If those funds, and they're dismantling the Department of Education, which is a whole nother topic. But if we don't get those funds, we're going to have to either raise property taxes. We certainly can't backfill them from the state. But we're going to have to figure out what we're going to do, because kids are going to go to school. We're not going to have books. They're not going to be able to pay their light bill. They're not going to be able to pay their employees, the teachers. It's cataclysmic.
And it is because exactly this past Monday, it was when the SNAP program stopped working. As I understand, in Montgomery County, it was 63,000 households. In your jurisdiction, you mentioned near to 6,000, no? Near to 6,000. Now, for the people who is here, your jurisdiction is part of Norristown.
I have all of Norristown.
All of Norristown.
All of Norristown, all of Plymouth Meeting, and all of Conshohocken.
Okay, therefore you have all those 3 neighborhoods that are connected, and that in itself it has a strong economy interchange all the time. No, therefore, if the SNAP program is stopped and the food banks are now unable to provide and to close the gaps, is there any plan at the state level that is in discussion to help these families?
It's a great question. So a couple things. We're really fortunate in our community that we have people that have been closest, and I believe this, first of all, that when you elect people to be representatives in our government, in this representative democracy, we have to have people that are closest to the pain at the table solving the problem. So as a person who's been food insecure, I know directly what these impacts are like. I know what it's like to go to school on an empty stomach, which is why I want to make sure that we have universal free breakfast and universal free lunch for every kid in Pennsylvania. I don't think that any kid deserves to go to school on an empty stomach. And it's hard to learn on an empty stomach, right?
It is.
I know what it's like to go and swipe my card at the lunch line and then say, oh, I have too much debt, so I can't buy any lunch. I don't believe that we should have debts in lunch. Every kid should eat for free. Back to your question, though, we're really fortunate to have leadership at the county level and at the state level. Not only with myself, but Senator Capoletti, myself, and Governor Shapiro worked together to make sure that we delivered $5 million from the state down to local food banks to make sure that we were able to get funding. We also have leadership at our county level. I just was with County Commissioner Jamila Winder earlier today, but this week the county commissioners unveiled a program to give $500,000 to food banks in Montgomery County that helps them close that gap during this time when Fill Abundance and Share program, they typically get their food from, because of the need, there's not enough food to go around. So this money will help them purchase food, help them keep the lights on, help them to deal with the increase of surplus. Some of them are actually feeding people as well. They're not just giving them the food for them to cook. They're actually cooking the food. So this money will be able to it's unrestricted. It'll give them the ability to buy the supplies, the forks, the knives, the others. Because of Montgomery County's investment in that has spurred other organizations, private foundations, private corporations to then bring to match their money. So I know you just had Emma on from Health Spark Foundation. Health Spark just gave money towards that initiative, and they're funding the Monco Anti-Hunger Network and other initiatives to help boost it. With that being said, what we need, if people are listening and they want to get off the sidelines and get into this game and help people, the best ways to do that right now is that when they go grocery shopping, if they can afford it, the same can that they're buying for their family, buy an extra can for the food bank. And on your way home, drop it off at one of our food banks. I know we have some that you've listed before. We have got Aclamo, we've got the Patrician Society, we've got Martha's Choice. They're out here doing the real work in a barrier-free way. And I think what's incredibly important about the barrier-free way, these are trusted individuals that are helping people. We're not asking for IDs. We're not asking for your immigration status. We're not collecting that data. These are organizations that just want to help people because it's the right thing to do. So those are organizations that I trust. Those are organizations that I volunteer at. Those are organizations that I give food at. And so I want to make sure that we lift those people up. So if you have an extra canned good, you can give them that. If you have an extra $5, right? Give that to them. If you have a turkey voucher, sometimes with some of these grocery stores, you can get a free turkey if you buy so many options. If you have a turkey voucher and you're able to afford a turkey, giving that turkey voucher to the Patrician Society or Martha's Choice will go a long way to helping a family. We plan to give out, Martha's Choice has already given out 1,000 turkeys for Thanksgiving. They've had to sign up. We plan to give out another 1,000 with some of our community partners the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. So that's going to help us do that by you giving those donations. So that's kind of like what we're doing. That's what we need right now, and I think there's more work to be done. I know that Governor Shapiro, the courts have told the president of the United States to give SNAP their money, fund the SNAP program. The president has gone back and said, hey, I don't want to fund it 100%, and the state should have to do it. The Shapiro administration just filed a statement, and I haven't had a chance to read it, to rebuff that, but this is very clear. We have people that want to help people, and we have people that want to hurt people. And I think the American people saw on Tuesday the real people that want to help people, and that's why we had the results on Tuesday that we did.
Yeah, I believe so, and I think you have placed it with a lot of clarity. On one hand, we see people that wants to hurt, and is hurting, and on the other hand, we are seeing the generosity of people.
Yeah.
And the call for generosity, the call for sharing, the call for the community to bring alternative solutions is when teach us that the power of the community in times of crisis, it can make a change and it can strengthen society.
1,000%. 1,000%. On Monday, I think it was Sunday, I had put out a statement on social media, on my social media platforms, that on Tuesday it's election day and we want to make sure that we help our food banks. So when you go to the polls to vote, can you bring a canned good? Can you bring something? And I partnered with them. It actually was not my idea, I have to admit. It was the Montgomery County Democratic Party Operation Feed and Hope's idea. But I put it out there on Sunday, and when we put out there Sunday, Monday, I want to say, it was probably posted because I taped it on Sunday. On Tuesday, we had a trailer full of food. that we were able to deliver to our food bank partners, right? And you talk about the generosity, that's what helps keep me fueled. The young people, and I just spoke to a group of 7th graders this morning about the current state of affairs in our government, and they asked some really tough questions. But the young people, and then also people's generosity, it gives me hope in this moment because people are seeing what's happening, and it keeps me fueled to keep moving forward.
Thank you. And yes, then we encourage people, if you can give, if you can share, go to any of the food banks and share.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you
Yeah.
support whoever you want to support, but I want to be very clear
Sure.
that when I lift up names of organizations, these are organizations that I have personally vetted, and I think it's important in this time that we make sure that people are giving to the right places.
Okay.
Because
Which one was?
well, no. I mean, I'm not. None of these people are paying me, but what I am saying is, I think it's important. We don't want people taking advantage of these moments.
Absolutely,
Right?
absolutely.
Martha's Choice
Martha's
has
Choice.
a pantry that is very helpful in this moment. The Patrician Society, Martha's Choice is on Johnson Highway. The Patrician Society is at Green and Oak Street, or Green and Chestnut Street. The Patrician Society, and I think everybody knows Aclamo on Marshall Street. And the reason I'm being very clear, especially with this audience, is making sure that we want services that can be as barrier free as possible, that can help people maintain their dignity in this moment, but that we can also hold accountable. And these are people that I have found to be good stewards of the funds we give them. And I'm not saying that anybody else is out there doing anything nefarious. I just know that these groups are doing the work, and they're helping people, and they don't turn people away. And so when you go there, you can get the help that you need. They're not asking you to fill out a 20-page questionnaire to confirm that you're poor, right? Like, they're not asking you if you can speak English or Spanish or where you come from. Hey, you're here in line, we're going to feed you because that's what God says. Feed the hungry.
Yeah. No, I think that's very important, and thank you. Thank you, because we want to guide the people to the places that we know are serving, no? And that is very important. Now, in the same federal government shutdown, well, we know that there are other effects. We already talked about the effects in the economy, in the local businesses. And now let's go to another topic. Let's change to the next topic that I wanted to ask you. I was just in Latin America, Greg. I have been in 3 countries this past summer: Mexico, Argentina, and Uruguay. Many of the people there really had hard time to understand why the United States is closing the U.S. Department of Education, which the equivalent in our countries will be the Secretaría de Educación, Ministerio de Educación, in which we consider it's very important that the federal government consider education as a priority. And we find this year that the U.S. Department of Education is closing. It's closing, reducing responsibilities. It's very important for the different resources that college students can have, college loans, important resources for the local school districts. Therefore, we know that this will have effects on education at the state level, especially in a school that has been under-resourced, like Norristown. And we can't forget that only a few years ago, until recently, we have the school lawsuit because they under resources to the school district in Norristown and in general in other school districts. And I know that last year, for first time, the school district received more than usual. And I wanted to ask you, what, in your opinion, are those effects that we can expect? And while I connect my laptop,
Sure.
Thank you, you can share to us.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, let's start with this. One, that the way we educate kids, especially in Pennsylvania, I can't really speak across the country because I've only seen a couple state systems, but in our state, the way we fund and the way we supply public education is fundamentally flawed. So I want to start there. The second thing I want to say is that despite it being fundamentally flawed, a vast majority, an overwhelming majority of students get their education through the public education system, which I believe in. I believe that we need to have a public option for young people to learn. There should be a foundational level of education that every kid in this country gets. I also believe that education can be the pathway to a better life. I believe in education. I'm a recipient of Catholic education, charter school education, Quaker education, private education, and public education. And I don't know how my life could have turned out if I had not been exposed to those different mediums of education. What we have seen at the federal level is President Trump following up on his commitment to dismantle anything or any supports for people that don't support him and that don't look like him or don't come from neighborhoods that look like neighborhoods that he and his supporters grew up in. And the dismantling of education, the U.S. Department of Education in particular, which is what your question was, is reflective of his commitment to make sure that the people that support him financially first and then voting second, that they are supported and protected, but others aren't. One of the primary tasks of the U.S. Department of Education is to make sure that marginalized and disadvantaged communities across this country have the safeguards and the funds to fulfill a quality public education. And when you dismantle that, that means that marginalized and disadvantaged communities that predominantly are black and brown won't get the resources they need. Let me give you an example here in Narsetown. As I mentioned, we received roughly $23 million from the federal government in the Narsetown School District. Dismantling that funding, if they were to lose that funding, we would have a significant problem. I know you had Chris Jaramillo on the podcast before. While he was on the board balanced their budget, and if I'm not mistaken, there was a zero increase in the last 2 years in property taxes from the school district. I may be wrong on the number of years, but I believe that they had a zero increase. Part of that is, one, because of what we did at the state to make sure that we've given them their money, but then the federal government. If the federal government takes that away, then we may have to raise property taxes. Okay, so let's not dive down the property tax route, because that could lead to a lot of different discussions, which we're not prepared to have tonight because of our time. But let's just talk about what we do with that money, what the school district does with that money. We know that marginalized communities, particularly black and brown communities, a lot of our kids learn differently, and they need those supports to learn. Let's take, again, Narsetown, our example. We have a lot of students where English is their second language, right? So a kid that's going to a school that only speaks English and only has books that are in English and only has teachers that speak English needs to bring in a level of translators, because we don't have the amount of teachers that's necessary to be bilingual. We got to bring in translators. We got to buy books that are translated. We got to buy technology that translate things. All that costs money. Mm-hmm. The money that we get helps us to do those things, to buy those programs. So a district that doesn't need those level of supports, or they may need, our kids, if you're learning if you're an ESL student, you're going to be in a smaller class than a typical regular ed student, because we need to provide that level of support. We do that with that money. If that money goes away, it's harder. And for those people that say, well, we don't need that in these other districts, so why should we have to give that money to them? Well, it's about humanity, right? Like, you may go to and I don't want to name a school district because I don't know their facts, but let's just say a school district far out in the suburbs, in Chester County, for example. They may not have the same population that we have here in Narsetown. Mm-hmm. So with their money, they're buying new baseball fields and football fields and new football equipment. We can't buy those things here in town. right? We got to buy the stuff that goes into student learning and student outcomes. So if that money goes away, the only way for our local school district to do it is to raise property taxes because we can't backfill it at the state. So it's going to be on the burden. Well, if this is a population, I already said we have 4,053 people in this town that receive SNAP benefits. If they're on SNAP benefits, they certainly can't afford a higher property tax. So then we're going to end up taxing people out of their homes and putting a tax on simply being poor. Because in Pennsylvania, the quality of your educational outcome is determined by your race and your zip code. Well, not your race, but more your zip code. And we know that our zip codes determine our race and our poverty, our economic status. So essentially, you're double taxing, triple taxing the poor. Even the seniors are worse because they're not providing any kids to the tax system in the school district, but yet they're going to be taxed out of their home. And they're on a fixed income. And they're probably only on Social Security or receiving a small social benefit, right? Which, again, the federal government is dismantling at some level. So it's a vicious cycle. So President Trump's commitment to dismantle the U.S. Department of Education disproportionately affects black and brown communities and poor communities because the fundamental role of the U.S. Department of Education was to stand up for those marginalized communities. It was created to make sure that it protected the U.S. Department of Education's Department of Civil Rights. They go into school districts that aren't following through with people's IEPs, that aren't providing the level of services that we're providing here at the Norristown School District with respect to our students that require those programs. But now all those lawyers are going away. The U.S. Department of Education can barely do its job because they're trying to fund it all away in an effort to right-size government, which I'm all about right-sizing government. But we're not going to right-size government and protect the American people by making sure that the American people don't have a shot at the American dream by not giving them a public education. Make it make sense.
Yeah, no, and the contradiction is that on one hand, it dismantle education, it dismantle other social services, and increase budget to a militarized police.
Yeah.
For example, no. Therefore, and we'll talk about that. But it's important for the community that is listening to us to understand how these measures affect minorities, affects those who we are people of color, and those who in the journey through education overcoming poverty and transforming the neighborhoods. One of the things that I most enjoy on my daily day is to see kids moving on in their education, is to see kids doing their homework, developing their talents, developing their dreams, increasing their dreams, realizing their dreams, applying to college, be accepted in college. I have seen already here in Norristown 14 generations of young people going to college through the efforts of education that we make.
Yeah.
And therefore, while we have a community that is proposing change, that is proposing a model of education that is accelerating young people, and then we receive this kind of I would say, of hits against us, or punches against us, I will denounce it that is very much that the people many times, even those who supported that government from minorities, didn't know that they were voting against themselves.
That's unbelievable. It's unbelievable to me. I still talk to people who come up to me and ask me for help and then say, I didn't know it was going to be like this when I voted the way I voted. And so what I have learned is that if we want to make this world a better place, if I want to be an active participant in this democracy and I want to be an active change maker or change agent in this governmental process, I've got to begin to talk to people that don't look like me, that don't come from my neighborhoods, that don't have my same political ideologies, so we can begin to see common ground. And so that's a core belief that I have. But it has been challenging for me because I knew after the election what was going to take place. I saw it. I could feel it. We lived through it one iteration. Now he's going to be bold and do it bigger and better, allegedly, or badly. So we saw it coming. But with that being said, the other thing I just want to lift up is the work that you all are doing here is incredibly important. About 14 generations of young people going to college. When I came in here tonight, we had kids in classrooms with our partner universities. I think Villanova and a few other organizations, Penn, are helping kids apply for college here at Zacate with young high school students. And so it's not just that they're going to go out and get an education, but they're going to go out to these quality schools, world-renowned schools, and get a quality education. And you and I both know that our education system, especially post-secondary education, is built in the social fabric of our society, right? And you are lining kids up in position to go to schools with people who will be the next Secretary of State, the next Supreme Court Justice, and the next United States Senator, or eventually President of the United States. And it could be one of the kids that are dispatched from here. So when I say that I believe in education and it being a great equalizer, I don't think there's anybody that I've seen really embody it the way you guys have done it here. And I really applaud that work that you're doing because it's incredibly important.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you. And that is, and I have to say this, that is the effort in that recognition to the tremendous work of the families, of the teachers, volunteers, allies, and the participation, as you mentioned, that here we have been always building bridges with institutions that can put closer educational opportunities. And we are so happy to do that and to see. And I will say it's one of my fuels of every day to do what I do, no? And just thinking in that, absolutely, I believe that education is the one that helps us to balance, to close gaps, to advance. But in the midst of insecurity, it becomes difficult to learn.
Yeah.
And we have seen this year, let me say it like this. This is not the first time that as a community we experience ICE in town. I have seen it in the end of the 2000s, beginning of 2010s, all the way to 2013. Once that Zacate was starting in those years, I remember the presence of ICE. Even in those years, I remember the participation of the local police in that. That today is not the case. We have gone really far these years. Changes. We have seen changes even in the local politics here in Norristown. But the truth is that this year, insecurity has come to town. It has come also trauma to our kids. It has come also situations in which we see the division of families by thousands in the country and here in town. Only this week, I have received at least 4 calls of people asking for direction in what to do because a loved one, a family member, or a neighbor was just picked up, but they were not even sure that that was ICE. They were not even sure that they were ICE agents because they are masked. Therefore, in these months that we are already in November, and we started this journey in January, this situation, what are some of the effects that you have seen in your constituents and in the neighborhood by the presence of ICE, by this militarized police that has been overfunded? What are some of the effects that you are already seeing these months here?
So I want to say that I want to push back on you a little bit. So one, I would say yes, it is a true statement that this year isn't the first time we've seen ICE in our communities. I saw it back when I was a district judge during President Trump's first attempt at trying to lead a government. And I saw it because we had victims of crime here in our community who came to my courtroom to testify as victims of crime and then got scooped up by ICE upon their exit, which I felt to be immoral, and it sent a chilling effect in the community and people not wanting to come forward when they got robbed, or women who were victims of domestic violence, because they knew if they came to court that they could possibly get deported. So we've seen it before. What we haven't seen is the carelessness for humanity. What we haven't seen is the vile attempt to bust a woman's car window and drag her out of the car and smash her car and drag her physically, manhandle her out of a car and pull her onto the street. We haven't seen college students or college professors on their college campus walking from their living quarters to their classroom and getting disappeared. Those are things that are new. Those are things that are frightening.
Absolutely.
We haven't seen, in my time here, I've never seen any member of law enforcement. And again, I was a judge for 6 years. I've never seen any member of law enforcement say, hey, I want to enforce the law. And when I'm enforcing the law, I don't have to tell you who I am or where I'm from. And I don't even have to show you my face. I can just come up and physically grab you and put you in my car without giving you a piece of paper, without saying what the charges are. I've never seen that.
Yeah,
I've never seen that. And quite frankly, I would say that in the country that I mean, I've read the Constitution. I know a little bit about the law. I would wager to say it's not legal. It's unconstitutional. And it's already un-American. It's certainly unpatriotic. And it goes, we call it in the legal field, there's the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. It certainly goes against the spirit of who we are as a country and what it means to me to be an American. So we've seen it before, ICE being here, but we've never seen it this way.
Exactly.
The second thing I'll say is that you want to know about the consequences of these actions. There are a lot of things that get that are intertwined, that are interconnected in this moment. And one of them that is incredibly important that we not sleep on is the fact that in Norristown, we have roughly 7,000 kids, maybe a little over 7,000 kids. Half of them identify as Hispanic, right? When President Trump took office the second time, it was last January in the middle of the school year. Then there was some executive orders signed that day, and then there was the first ICE raid. And about 2 or 3 weeks in, you saw them starting to ramp up this different activity. And we had days in our school district that we had our attendance at or below 50%. That means 50% of the kids weren't showing up to school. Right? When these ICE raids happen in our community, kids aren't going to school. And we know that in our community, schools are a good source for breakfast, lunch, and community. They go there to learn. It's a safe space. If they're not at their safe space, they may not be in a safe space when they're out of that building. So there's that point. The other point is, if the safe space where they're going is currently being dismantled by the U.S. Department of Education and they're not getting their state funds, we're double punching these kids. And we know, at least not we, but what our educators tell me in the Norristown School District is that every day a kid is absent, it takes a week to 2 weeks to remediate that child. Right? So not only are we not going to give them the money, they want to take away the money they already budgeted and thought they would have and give them less money. But now we know we're going to educate more of them. We're going to give them more resources, which cost more money, and we don't have that money. We're setting ourselves up for failure. So we've got to start reimagining what does public education look like. For us, it may look like a year, a 365 school year, just so that we can keep up. We got a lot of catching up to do because a lot of our kids have been absent. You say, well, why won't they go to school? Schools are safe. Well, they were safe and they were off limits. So were churches back in the day, but they went to churches too. That's a whole nother story. But we know in our school, and it's just in our school district, we have had parents arrested while dropping off their kids. That reverberates.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't say arrested because it's not really arrested. It's detained. ICE has come and apprehended people dropping off their kids, going to school. And so what does that tell the kid that thought that the school was a safe place? Mind you, these are kids that go to school and have lockdown drills, active shooter drills, stuff that I didn't necessarily have when I was a kid. So now we're also having their parents arrested, and they're going to have to go to school, and they may come home from their school and realize that their mom or dad might not be there. How do you explain it to a child? And we're having to have all these conversations with people who this is real world reality for them. So a couple things just to recap your point. One, this ICE activity has unintended or maybe intended consequences, because quite frankly, I don't know the hearts of these people because I don't interact with them. But the unintended consequences are immeasurable at this point, not just from a fiscal standpoint from the ICE activity, but also from a remediation standpoint with these kids not going to school. But then number three, we've got to have additional mental health supports for these people, for these young people. And then we also got to make sure that, that they're able to navigate life without a parent, that's here, or a guardian, and how do we deal with that? It's a lot. It's a lot. And all of that before the kid can learn. You can't learn if you've got all this stress in your mind. Same way you can't go to work when you got stuff going on. You have to physically go, but how productive are you? How productive are you at work if you can't mentally be in the game? So, yeah, it's challenging. A lot of unintended consequences. What am I doing? Great question. So at the state level, we have... me along with some of my colleagues have started working on legislative ideas that would help safeguard a lot of these things. So some of the federal protections that the U.S. Department of Education is trying to take away, we're trying to codify those in the state law. The discrimination language, the language to make sure that kids with IEPs have the right to certain educational material. We're trying to codify those things into law. We're also trying to, from an ICE perspective, make sure that we are able to hold law enforcement accountable. Any law enforcement activity, I have a bill along with Representative Joe Webster, who represents parts of the Narsetown School District. And then on the state side, Amanda Capoletti has a bill that's similar that would prohibit law enforcement activity in our communities for people that aren't displaying their organization, that aren't displaying their name, and that wear masks. So it doesn't... A lot of people say, well, what about the SWAT activity, undercover activity? It explicitly prohibits. It explicitly says that that's allowed, but what it's not going to allow is for people to just show up untitled and all that kind of stuff without it. And if you capture that, what we're trying to do is to make it under our state human relations code that a citizen can videotape it, upload it, and then if the investigation is determined who it is, we could hold them civilly liable. A district attorney or the attorney general can hold them civilly liable or criminally liable depending upon the activity. So that's another piece of legislation that we're doing. We're also having a bill. We're really lucky in the Narsetown School District that once before even President Trump put his hand on the Bible and took the oath of office, our superintendent Chris Dormer and our county officials and our local officials all were in a meeting about how do we handle this. Rebecca Smith was a leader in this, Tom LaPierre, leaders in this, trying to figure out how, when this happens, what are we going to do? What are these protocols? And under Chris Dormer's leadership, we were able to put together a very comprehensive policy, as you know, about what happens if ICE shows up at the schools. So there's another piece of legislation that will require schools to have an ICE plan in place. There's another bill that would prohibit our state police and our local police from entering in official agreements. So detainers for ICE and those kind of things could be honored if it's a judicial warrant. But other than that, like not entering into these relationships, allowing county prisons to be ICE facilities to hold people that are on ICE warrants. So for me, and people say, well, if they're breaking the law, then they should be they should go. I believe I'm a former judge. I believe in law and order. When I call 911, I want the cops to come. I believe it is pro police to make sure that there's a level of transparency and accountability. I also believe that no human being that is here in this country is here illegally. I believe we're here. We have humanity. We have heart. If someone is committing crimes, you and I both agree on that. We want them to be held accountable. If someone is here and they are, committing criminal behavior, they should be held accountable. And I'm all for accountability. So this legislation that we're working on doesn't absolve anybody from accountability if they're committing criminal behavior. But simply your mere presence isn't a criminal behavior, in my opinion.
No, absolutely, and I think that is why I was thinking that in the 2000s, 2010s, we had many of these discussions about the terminology, and today is more aggressive, as you have mentioned. We have seen things that we didn't see before. But one of the things that I want to mention, and I will say this, not changing the hats of the one who is interviewing, but as a professor, I always tell to my students, when we say that no one is illegal, is because the essence of the presence of the person in the world is not illegal. We are talking about undocumentation, which is not the same that illegality. And that is the element when we talk about undocumentation. That is why, after many years, 35 years, we have been requesting an immigration reform.
Oh, thank you. Bring up a very good point. I mean, you bring up and not to interrupt you, but Captain Chaos at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue has orchestrated this. He thrives on chaos. Let's just go back under the last 6 months of President Joe Biden, last 9 months. I don't remember the exact month or year, but a month in the year. But Senator James Lankford, conservative Republican pastor, who's a United States senator and a Democratic senator. I can't think of the name of the Democratic senator, but if you can think of it, put it in the comments so I can look at it. But I can't think of the name. But they had an agreement, and there was 3 senators on both sides, 3 conservatives, 3 Democrats, came to an agreement on language for a pathway to citizenship.
Exactly.
We all know, if you are an intelligent person listening to the sound of my voice, you know that it is impractical to just round up a bunch of folks and just deport them, right? Like it's not logistically feasible. And look at we're 10 months in and it still hasn't been done, and it's not going to be done. You know it's not going to be. There's no way they can physically do it. We don't have the manpower. We don't have the logistics. So why don't we create a pathway of citizenship? The only reason why it didn't happen is because Captain Chaos thought it would cost him his election, and he killed the bill. There was a vote for them to do it. When he took office, where are we at? November at this point? So 11 months ago, 10 months ago, when he took office, the United States Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives, which we all know are puppets of Captain Chaos, they have not brought up this bill yet again. Bill that had broad bipartisan support, but because Senator John Thune, the leader in the U.S. Senate, and Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the U.S. House, are under his thumb, they still have not brought up that bill. There's an easy, practical way for us to fix this wrong. How about we bring up that bill, allow folks that are here, that are living in the shadows, let's allow a pathway for them to become citizens, pay their worth, be a part of this without living in darkness and without fear of being separated from their kids or their families. Let's allow them to be citizens of this country. And mind you, that is just the moral thing to do. Aside from it being the practically responsible thing, aside from it being, the easiest way for us to get through this, it's just morally right. And I don't think that there's anything that's more American than that. So, again, he and his cronies have allowed for this chaos because they thrive off of it. It's a sick, demented thing. I don't understand. I don't know how it works or how their head works, but it's crazy to me.
Yeah, and there is a mix, and that's why I wanted to bring the analysis of this term, because after repeating the word illegality or illegal constantly, ends criminalizing the community.
Yeah.
Ends criminalizing the community. And it seems that when the people listen repetition after repetition, let's just remember the campaigns. In the campaigns, even after the soccer games, or even after the football games or the baseball games, there were the ads criminalizing the immigrant community. And when it's criminalizing
No,
the
it wasn't
immigrant
just
community,
that.
it's dehumanizing.
He started his campaign. The first one, when he came
Yeah.
down the escalator. All Mexicans are rapists.
Well, that's it from the very beginning.
From the very beginning.
But yeah, from the very beginning. And then the dehumanization of the people. As we have said in this podcast, in Diálogos de la Vía Inmigrante, the dehumanization of the people is the first step for abuse. Is the first step. Because one that has been dehumanized, then the followers feel easy to abuse for the immigrants. That's why we call constantly in this podcast, we, the immigrant community, we are human beings. We are parents, we are husbands, we are mothers, we are wives, we have kids.
You're taxpayers.
We are taxpayers. We are people of initiatives, of businesses,
entrepreneurs.
We had to tell people we are humans. And if the problem is documentation, that's why the proper term is undocumented, then the solution is give a path to documentation. And it has been in 2000, in this year, it will be 40 years since we are requesting an immigration reform. 40 years. Meaning that someone who came in 1986, that has been working here for 39 years, giving their adult life to this country without benefits, because people need to educate themselves to understand that do not have access to benefits, do not have access to retirement, do not have access to social security, and many of the myths that in the dehumanization that they make, they tell that we consume resources. No, it's working. It has been full lives giving the best of their lives working for this country, and at the same time with the love and the values to love their families in their countries of origin. What wonderful population is this that works hard, that has helped to sustain this country and other countries, and that loves their families. That's why I have been always calling for a path to documentation and a path to citizenship. And finishing with that, Representative Scott, I want to ask you, is there any other message that you would like to share tonight, that you would like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I just want to say that that these are incredibly challenging times. I'm out every day. Yesterday I was talking with Martha's Choice at their food pantry. They ran out of food early, so they're literally turning people away. The day before, I was at the Patrician Society volunteering there and dropping off food. The Blessing Shop is open, giving out free clothes. We're getting in our winter months. LIHEAP, the program that helps people pay their heating bills during the winter, has closed, and that won't open until December, possibly later if this government shutdown doesn't get. So I just want to let people know that there are real people hurting, and that the people that are hurting right now, a lot of them are much like everyone else, right? And aside from the dehumanization that you've seen of the community, I also want to say that a lot of Americans born here, or that have naturalized here, are all one paycheck away from calamity. There are a lot of them, and if I missed a paycheck, it would be hard for me to pay my bills. There's I have a newborn baby, as you know, 14 weeks, $1,500 a month in childcare costs, right? If I miss a paycheck, it's gonna have cataclysmic effects on my family's life, and I feel like I've made all the right decisions. So for people that say, oh, you should make better decisions and you won't be on SNAP. Oh, you should make better decisions and you wouldn't have to go to a food bank. Oh, you should make better decisions and you'll be able to pay your light bill. Well, there are people that make the right decisions. They lost
Mm-hmm.
their job. They got into an accident, right? That life just happened to them, and they had more need than paycheck. And there are a lot of Americans that are living that way. And I just want to let people know that I see them in that moment. I see them in that struggle because I'm one of them. And so I think it's incredibly important that we tell your story. So to the extent that you're comfortable, make sure you step out of your comfort zone and share and push back on those narratives on social media and other
Mm-hmm.
places that that these programs like SNAP and LIHEAP are only set up for undocumented people, or only set up to be a safety net for people that don't want to work, for people that don't have initiative, because that could be furthest from the truth. And maybe not in the rest of this country, but certainly here in the community that I live and raise my family, it's furthest from the truth. So I see you. The second thing I'll say is, in the event that you need help in this moment, feel free to reach out to my office, Sakate. Go to a trusted resource. And if we can't help you, we can point you in the right direction of where we can go, where you can go. My office number is 484-685-3494. You can also email me at repscott@pahouse.net, and we can put that in the comments. Feel free to reach out. We have people that speak Spanish in my office. I only speak a little bit of Spanish, my Spanish is not really that good. But if you call my office, we should be able to get back to you if we don't answer the phone right away. The third thing is, for people that are a little bit more fortunate around these holiday times, that have a little bit more runway after they've eaten their food or paid all their bills and they've got a couple extra dollars, I would ask that they give $5, $10, $15 to trusted organizations that are out here that are doing the work in a barrier-free way, but that hold themselves accountable, right? And when I go out and I talk, people say they want to volunteer. Organizations, I always say Sakate, Aclamo. Those are great organizations if you want to help out in our immigration community. But in this moment, obviously the biggest need is food. If you got food donations or want to help out to any the Patrician Society, I know Aclamo has a food bank as well. Some of our churches have food banks as well. We have that list on our website, repgregscott.com. We don't generally, in my office, promote any organization that it requires anyone to fill out 20 pages of
Mm-hmm.
paperwork to get help. So for the most part, if they're on our list, we've probably vetted them and we're helping them. And if you see me lifting them up on social media, I've definitely gone to them and trust them. And so the last thing I'll say is, to your people, is to make sure you're getting information from a credible source in this moment. There are a lot of people out here, having different, podcasts and, social media. Don't believe everything you say on believe everything you see on social media. Go to a reputable, trusted
Mm-hmm.
source, get information on what to do and how to help. Because there are a lot of fraudulent people out here, pretending to help, and they're not really helping. They're actually hurting, quite frankly, in my opinion. But that's a whole nother conversation. And so that's my only message. And the last thing I want to say is to you and your team and to everybody here. I'm so incredibly proud that, however you got to Norristown, you did get here, because you've been such a valuable asset to our entire community, into the fabric of our community. And the work that you're doing is incredibly important work, not just in this moment, because you've been doing the work for a long time. It just happens to be more meaningful in this moment because of the moments that we live in, and incredibly being a safe haven. And so I just really appreciate what you're doing, and I try my best to get here as often as I can. And when you call, I do answer. If I don't answer, I call you back. But any way that we can be helpful and be better partners, I'm open and I'm all ears. And I'm really appreciative of your entire team and what you're doing here, raising up some really cool people. I'm glad to play a little small part in it.
No, no, thank you so much, Representative Scott. And I want to say to everyone who is watching us, one of the things or the messages that I want to highlight of today is that as a community we can strength together,
Yeah.
we can defend our rights together, our civil rights together. We can also exercise generosity on these difficult times, and also to humanize us It is not a crime to be poor. It is not a
No.
crime to be immigrant. They have made us believe, and they have criminalized poverty. They have criminalized immigration, but it's not. We are humans. We are hardworking people. We are families, and this is the time to exercise unity, solidarity, strength, and love, and love. And I will say like this: I want to give you thanks, Representative Scott, Greg, for being with us, for sharing with the community, and we would love in this podcast of Organizate, Movilizate, Organize, Mobilize, from time to time to have you, to see the
I
changes that are
promise I'm gonna
coming,
come back.
to see the changes that are happening after a number of months, to catch up, no, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Mucho gusto.
Mucho gusto. Muchas gracias, Greg. And for everyone else from the city of Norristown in the region of the city of the brotherly love, this was Sobedarango for